Reporter Erin Bates joins us now to discuss this particular story. Damning findings. Erin?
Yes, I mean, he gave an analysis of several of the witnesses in the inquiry, so it wasn't only commentary on Minister Bathabile Dlamini's testimony, also Thokozani Magwaza and Zane Dangor. But he said, to put it mildly, her testimony was less than satisfactory, and then gave several examples of that. He also answered the questions that he was set out to answer by the Constitutional Court, including why Bathabile Dlamini didn't indicate her role in those controversial work streams. He said, in not so many words, he thinks she omitted that information because it was the very question that would determine whether or not she should personally be liable for costs in this case.
Now, this report is going to the Constitutional Court. Now, what are the possible implications for Bathabile Dlamini?
Very costly possible implications here. I mean, this is the report that will form the basis for the Constitutional Court's decision on whether or not she should personally be charged over litigation on the SASSA social grants crisis and the repeated missing of deadlines to bring that grant payment in-house. So the consequences here are likely to be really severe, and also interesting because if they do rule that she must pay, it will be the first time since the inception of the Constitutional Court in South Africa that a minister has been personally attached to a case and asked to pay up for what has happened.
Now, what's supposed to happen next for the Court to then take a decision?
Always the question on time, and rightly so. I mean, with this report at the end of the inquiry proceedings, Ngoepe said he knows that it's urgent, he'll see to the matter as soon as possible and then file with the Constitutional Court. That's happened now, it's the beginning of May. So as to when the Constitutional Court will finally make its ruling on this, I can't say. It certainly isn't down on their roster, their calendar of cases for the next term at the court. But they may add it to the list in time. But at this point, all we know is that Ngoepe has provided this report with damning findings for the former Social Development Minister, and that it's sitting with them.
Very briefly, what did he say about Thokozani Magwaza and the former DG?
So he was very complimentary about Zane Dangor's testimony in this case. He said that some of the information on Dangor's resignation and his sort of removal or recusing himself of his association with Bathabile Dlamini was crucial to some of Ngoepe's findings on the work streams and the minister or then minister's role in the work streams. On Magwaza, he said something, in fact, we'd covered at ENCA, which was that he was almost overwrought in his testimony because Ngoepe said not because he was an uncredible witness, but simply because it seemed like he finally had an opportunity, he finally had a forum to vent all of his frustrations over the work streams, not answering to him as they were meant to do in government policy and protocol, but answering directly to the minister. And that's one of the fundamental things here. What Ngoepe really had to find out was what role did the minister have in setting up the work streams and appointing the individuals who led them, and who answered to her on these work streams. Did they report directly to her? Ngoepe found yes, they were established at her behest.
It was a breach of government protocol.
Exactly, and that's something Zane Dangor raised in his testimony, and that's also supported by the documentation that's included in Ngoepe's report and in the inquiry proceedings. So yes, she set up these inquiries. They answered directly through her, albeit through Zodwa Mvulane, who was the project manager. This flouted government protocol. It went completely against the right chains of command between SASSA, the work streams, and the CEO and the Minister of Social Development. He gave the date on which the work streams were appointed, which was something he was required to do by the Constitutional Court, and then he answered the question on why did the minister not disclose this to the Constitutional Court. He summarized her version, which was, well, she didn't realize that she was expected to. She thought this was around personal costs and it didn't seem relevant. And he said that simply does not hold water. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the meaning. And his deduction is that she didn't disclose it because this is the very thing that would hook her in. It would be the nettle she would have to grasp of her accountability over the social grants crisis.
Before I let you go, there's another story that you are keeping an eye on today, and that is the story of Varun Gupta, who is a cousin, nephew of Atul and Ajay. So he has approached the court. What does he want?
He wants a relaxation of his bail conditions. So he was one of these 8 accused who appeared in court in February, facing very serious charges, including fraud, corruption, theft and the like in connection with the Estina Dairy project. He had, under the bail conditions, the right to approach the investigating officer and say 6 weeks in advance, I'd like to travel internationally. Now what he's done is, in a smaller time frame, in about 2 or 3 weeks, gone to the investigating officer and said, I'd like to travel to India with my family in order to attend a pilgrimage and visit a temple in New Delhi. So he's asking the courts to allow him to travel outside of the country, to go to India, to attend to go to this temple and attend this pilgrimage, and then he's committed to returning to the country to face the case, which he says is a weak one.
Apparently, the NPA doesn't think he's a flight risk. In fact, the mere fact that there is that provision, but he has to do it, you know, within a specified period.
Yes, I think cynics might look at some of the travel records of his relatives and have a very different view on the probability that he will, as he says he will, return to the country and face those charges. But certainly there are allowances within the current bail provisions for him to travel as long as he makes the necessary arrangements and as long as he complies with the provisions of the court. So we don't have a decision as yet. The state argues that they have a very strong case against him, and the issue of the docket came up today, for example. Gupta's lawyers saying, we need the docket, it's relevant to this case, and they're saying the investigation is ongoing, we don't want to tip off any other potential suspects who may still need to be arrested, so we're not going to give you the docket now. But the magistrate will only rule on Friday. He wants to travel on Saturday to New Delhi and promises he'll be back in the country by the 27th of May.
So